Hi, everyone. So, my name is Rhea. If you don't know me, I am a business strategist at Bosses and Beauty and the co-owner. And I am here today with Marissa Leisenfelt. She is just an amazing human being. And I will tell you a little bit about how we know Marissa, and then I'll let her kind of jump into her own experience. But I was actually in a really high level mastermind a couple years ago, and Marissa was a guest speaker in that mastermind. And when I heard Marissa talk about operations, HR, everything to do with team, I was like, oh my gosh, we have to work with her. And so Trey, my husband, and I hired Marissa, and she worked with us on the back end operations of Bosses and Beauty for about a year. More so with Trey because I was super pregnant at the time. But she's just amazing. She's such a light, so beautiful, but also just so smart. So thank you so much, Marissa, for being here today. I'm so excited to just talk to you and kind of extract a little bit of your knowledge.
Yeah, well, thank you. First of all, that intro really lit me up. So I appreciate that a lot. And yeah, just a little bit about my background. So I have been in the back end of businesses for roughly 20 years now. And I spent time in different industries, tech, advertising, online sort of entrepreneurship and things like that. And so I've kind of woven my way around different aspects of business, but what stayed steady through that was the fact that I was running the back end, operations, team, HR, and really fundamentally, those pieces are quite similar industry to industry. So I've just spent my career really deepening my knowledge and abilities in those areas, having led teams as a COO, as a chief of staff. Yeah, HR, so you name it, anything operations, it's touching my background in some way.
Yeah, amazing. And can you tell us a little bit about when it comes to, because I mean, you've run the operations for 8 and 9 figure businesses. When you first go into these positions, as either head of HR or COO in the company, and for anyone that doesn't know, HR is human resources, and so
Yes.
and COO is Chief Operations Officer. And
Yeah.
so, what are like the biggest either bottlenecks or breakdowns that you see when it comes to operations or managing teams in these big companies?
In the larger companies. So process is super important really to any business. Definitely as you grow your team, process becomes more and more important. So the biggest thing that will actually bottleneck that process is if you have leadership, whether it's a CEO or whether it's, like a leadership layer of executives that aren't able to mentor the team and allow them to step into their unique abilities so that the whole engine can run and the process can run. So yeah, it's actually people a lot of times which bottlenecks that, and a lot of times it has to do with maybe not giving up control of something or not allowing, your employees and your team to actually, run with the things they're experts in as well.
Mhm. And do you think that's the same that goes for like smaller brick and mortar businesses? Is that it's usually like the maybe the leader that's not letting go or isn't there's a process broken in the system?
Yeah, actually, it's quite similar. And yeah, the smaller scale, it tends to be usually the business owner at that point, or, maybe there's a CEO and leadership. But yes, and what's really important to strike a balance of, in my opinion, for this is you want to empower your team to do the jobs they're there to do and not do their jobs, right? You want to be the actual CEO and not another sort of like doer in your business. However, you do need to set them up for success for that as well. So I think there's sort of this like chicken and egg thing that happens at times where maybe the business owner, CEO doesn't feel confident in their team's abilities, and that's why they're taking over the work, but they're also not necessarily training them and breeding them to be the best they can be. So it's like, you kind of need both sides of that. But generally speaking, yes, really elevating the business owner, the CEO into the role that they should be playing is the key to, well, scaling and, usually the success of the business overall.
And in terms of like when you come in and just fix everything and make everything better in HR, like what are the key either metrics you're looking for or key changes that you work on in terms of like the leadership or the hiring? What are the big like top 3 or 4 changes that you tend to like consistently make in businesses?
Yeah. So usually what I first look at is, especially when there's a team, what is the team accountable for? So what are the KPIs, or which stands for key performance indicators, or, how is this team being measured? How is their success being measured? And sometimes the answer is, well, we're not really measuring, or I don't know, and I don't know what I should be measuring, right? And that's okay. That's like, those are common answers. And usually when you're running a business from an entrepreneur angle, you're learning as you go. So that's the first thing I'll do, is make sure, does everyone really understand what's expected of them and like how success is being measured here? And if not, so I'll want to put in that layer. And then it's okay, now is there a process? Like, are there ways that people understand how to work with each other? Is there technology that they need to use and they're understanding how to use it properly? What is the process so that everyone can be really efficient? Because the more efficient the team and the leader is, the more profitable usually the business will be. So that's the next layer is, okay, so does the team get what they're doing? Do they understand how they're being measured? Is there a process that governs all this? And then the next layer is a little bit more qualitative, I would say. It's really about leadership and mentorship. And it's, is the team being groomed to be the best they can be? Is it an open environment where they can share their concerns? There's good lines of communication. Maybe we could bucket it under communication is really the biggest thing. So do people understand if they're doing well or not doing well? Do they have somewhere to go if they have questions or they want to take on more and they want to learn more? Are they being mentored so that they really are stepping into their most valuable selves in the company? And that's going to benefit everybody because they're going to feel a sense of belonging. They're going to feel like they want to contribute to the business. And then the business owner, the CEO, is going to feel like, their team is working for them and the business is growing because of them. So those are really the most important pieces I look at.
Yeah, that's interesting that you said, like, at the end of the day, it's maybe falls under the bucket of communication. And I feel like with the businesses that we work, with in the beauty industry, especially, and women that are essentially artists, like if you look at the E-Myth, the artist, the manager, leader, and the entrepreneur, like at their core, a lot of them are artists. So like tough conversations come really hard. And so I always say, like, try to kill the monster when it's little, but it's really hard when you're actually in the business and to like get past that tough conversation. And so, what do you feel like is the best way to handle like some of those just hard conversations with team members in terms of like when you're the owner or leader of the company and you don't have like that layer of someone handling HR or operations or anything like that, and like you're the one that needs to have the conversation?
Yeah, this is really tricky for a lot of people, including, bigger companies as well. This happens even at those layers of management and executives. So what I would say is having a built-in routine to have these conversations makes it easier because then you're not necessarily only having to, have these conversations when something's going wrong, which makes it feel there's more anxiety around it then when that's the case. But rather, if you're always consistently checking in with each other and having these conversations, it becomes normalized that you're talking about what's working and what's not. So it doesn't feel like, oh God, I have to have this conversation now and I don't want to have it. And it's like, oh, like I know that feeling. I've had that feeling as well. So what I always recommend is have a checkpoint with each team member. You can decide the cadence. You have to use discernment around that a bit, around what would be right for your company. But I would prefer like at least once every 2 weeks to do a check-in. It doesn't have to be super long. But there's two questions I like to ask, and I like for both parties, both the leader and the employee, to answer these same questions, which is what's working and what's not since, the last conversation. And even though it's kind of like broad questions, it actually brings up a lot of things typically. And I would start actually first with what's not working, because that's when you're going to get probably the best feedback from your employees, and that's when you're opening the floor for them to be honest with you. And also, I like to sort of, kind of enter into those conversations by saying, we're here so we can make sure that everything's, good on both sides. Like, please be honest. Like, it helps me if you're honest. And I really try to make it a safe place for them to speak and voice their concerns. But then, they may give you information that you didn't have, either about, sometimes your clients or sometimes other employees or sometimes how the business is running when you're asking these questions and you're actually getting more intel. And then when they're able to ask the question, then you can say to them, okay, well, let's talk about some things because I would love to see you stepping into this role, or I would love to see you, here's what's not working for me. I feel like, whatever it is, whatever's happening at the time. But, it just becomes a more natural conversation versus, okay, we're going to have to talk about something bad.
Right. But that's interesting that you said that because I feel like a lot of times you hear like start with the good and then go to the bad, but you're saying like start with what's not working and then go into what's working after that.
Yes, because then you can also end it on a note. Like once you've kind of worked through the stuff that might be a little bit more tough to work through and tough to talk about, then you're able to follow that with like, okay, well, let's be grateful about some things. Let's talk about what is working. And it sort of ends it on a better note. Yeah. And I feel like just kind of, I don't know, pulling the Band-Aid off in the beginning is better anyway, because it is kind of it's usually an anxious conversation if somebody has to bring something up that they don't want to bring up. So let's just do it and get
Yeah.
into it, and then we can talk about the good.
How do you know when it's like it's time to let someone go because they're just toxic to your culture, but they haven't really done anything specifically wrong, or like maybe they're really great at hitting goals, but like you can just, it's almost like an energetic feeling that you know that they're toxic. Because I feel like this happens in every business. It's like that one person that they may like be your A player in terms of hitting goals and doing what they need to do, but the attitude and the energy is just horrible and it affects your other team members.
Yeah, and honestly, I feel like attitude and energy can be the most impactful thing to a business's culture, and then because of that, the business's performance, even more so than like hitting numbers sometimes. It is a tricky question. I would try to find ways to make it tangible as much as possible. So if you feel like like maybe their attitude is off, like put some examples. Like what are some examples of like how this is manifesting? So you can have the conversation. I always suggest having a conversation with somebody first before you just go ahead and let them go, to see if they can turn it around. I've had some really good turnaround stories actually in my career, by having this conversation. And usually I, enter into it by saying, I want to give you some examples of your behavior that has not been working culturally. It has not been working, with the team. I give them those very clear examples. Here's what I would prefer to see otherwise, right? So it's either they just need to stop doing what they're doing altogether. Like we can't see this anymore. Or here's how I would prefer you handle something like that, and give them an example of what good looks like.
Mhm.
Give them a time period to work on it and see if they can turn it around. And then if they can't turn it around, then you can say, listen, like I gave you some pretty clear measurables here about what I want to see different from you behavior wise or attitude wise. I don't see the progress. So, and then you can move into the termination from there.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I feel like a lot of people, it's like we have two people that sign up for our program. It's like on one side, it's the people that are ready to hire, they haven't done it yet, and they want to do it the right way, or, learn, of course, there's always going to be mistakes and learning lessons on the way, but at least a little bit of a shortcut to success and also protection in their business. And then on the other side, it's like those really struggling with their team. And what I've seen is a lot of it's not just like who they hire, or sorry, not just the hiring process itself, but it's really like the people that they hire and then maintaining a really great culture. And the thing that I hear a lot is like loss of power, and not like power in a bad way, but they just like feel like they walk into their business and that their team has more power or control than they do. And I feel like a lot of that is like leadership and crafting and creating the right culture, but also, even in my own experience, getting rid of those toxic people as quickly as possible. But it's hard.
Yeah.
They're always disguised as like people that like make sales goals and, do all the right things in that sense.
Yeah. Well, and also that kind of goes with the last piece we were talking about of making sure you have communication happening with your team and it's happening frequently and consistently, because then at the very first sign of toxic behavior, you can bring that up as this is what's not working, right? So you're not like letting it happen for a few months and then it's like, oh, I can't do this anymore. I can't handle this employee anymore. Instead, you've like been talking about it along the way, and yeah, you can move more swiftly. Because I agree, having a toxic element in your business is really, really detrimental.
Yeah. And so, in seven figure teams, you are going to be one of our amazing guest speakers. I'm not an expert in HR and you are, so we always want to make sure to bring in experts in their area. And also, you'll be working with our platinum clients on their employee handbooks. Now,
Yeah.
when I first started a business, I had no idea about HR, or at least I had no idea I needed HR in a beauty business. And I just got very lucky that, you know, God bless me during those years that I didn't get in trouble. And also, I had no idea about employee handbooks when I first started hiring. Can you tell us the importance of like small businesses? I mean, specifically beauty, but any really small brick and mortar business having both like understanding HR in their business and also having employee handbooks?
Yes. So HR is sort of like a broad term because HR means, how you're managing your employees and the things that we've just been talking about. But HR also has, like a governing element to it as well. There's literally federal and state guidelines around HR. And it's not unheard of for employees to maybe sue their employers and things like that. So there's actually a legal component to HR, and it's meant to protect actually both parties. HR is meant to protect the employees against things like discrimination or harassment and things like that, like the laws around HR, right? The labor laws, but it's also meant to protect the business owner as well. And your handbook is actually a legal document, but it's one of your most protective documents as a business owner in terms of your personnel and your team. Because in that handbook, you can state all your policies, you can state, how you would take action. And I suggest everyone does this. It's in the template that we do in the program. But how you would handle situations of, let's say, if an employee feels like there's been discrimination or something like that. It's all laid out in the handbook, and the employee signs it. The employer stands behind it. So then if anything were to happen, let's say they did decide to sue you or something, that document's going to protect you in court because they've signed it and you've already laid out what you stand for as an employer and what the expectations are of your employees. So it kind of acts in many ways. It's a communication tool to explain, what sort of guidelines you have for people, like even things like how they need to present themselves at work, or like in the beauty business, people are hands-on with clients, right? So it's what are your expectations with how you're going to be in the room with clients and all that, right? So it covers quite a wide scope, but it's really a protective document for actually both parties.
Yeah, I mean, I really did get lucky, Marissa, because I
Yeah.
didn't have any of that when I started. And you live and you learn. And like now, a lot of what we teach is like the things I personally did right, but also what I've learned from experts like you and just by experience of what I did wrong. But I think especially today with people literally being so like sue happy, like you literally have to be protected as a business owner. And I feel like although we've talked about a lot of like almost like the scary side of it, what do you feel like is the best part and the importance of having a team in business today?
Well, for starters, it's just speaking to a business owner because I work with a lot of business owners and I work with actually some that do work solo, and it can be really lonely for them. So, having a team and having people that you are energized to be around when you do have the right team, right? And people that are in this sort of common goal with you, it's really energizing and uplifting. So I think even just the emotional aspect of running a business, when you are not doing it alone and when you have a team, it can be so much more rewarding, and there's so much more celebration and there's so much more support that you can have with that. It's just, yeah, I mean, making sure that you build the right team and that you're running the team correctly is going to definitely help with that culture. But there's a difference between showing up to work by yourself and doing something by yourself and showing up to a culture that's both supporting you and you're supporting them and you're winning together. So in many ways, I think it's actually the emotional side of business and how much more rewarding it can be to have a team. But that being said, there's also another component to it, which is, more pragmatic, which is around the money. So you can scale with a team. So you can be doing less work, making more money because you have people underneath you. that are generating that scale for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always say too, in like our industry where it's like so physical, if you're the only one in the treatment room, if you picture your life 10, 20 years down the line, it's like one, if something happens where you literally can lose your business overnight. And I've seen this in our industry so many times where it's like someone has a baby or a freak accident happens or even someone, passes away, unfortunately, and the business either stops completely or it pauses. And it's like, what happens to your livelihood when that happens? And so I also think just building in this industry specifically, building like a one person show business is a very risky way to like run a business. And
Yep.
if you do decide to grow a team, it's like there's risk to it, but if you learn how to do it the right way, like in our program and also with Marissa and having the right things in place, it really becomes not that risky because you're protected.
Yep. Yep. That's
Um,
a good point.
yeah, but I'm so excited. I'm so excited and grateful that you'll be teaching again in our program and also working one-to-one with our platinums and, doing what you do best. Um, what do you feel like is your biggest superpower in business?
Ooh, that's a good question. Honestly, for me, I think it's people, it's leading teams and building business through team. That really is my superpower. Always has. I mean, mostly it always has been. I moved into management very early in my career, and yeah, I just am skilled at getting things done through people, but at the same time, not just like that sounds bad when you say it that way, but at the same time, like giving them opportunities to grow and, create a culture. I really love creating culture as well. So yeah, it's people.
That's a huge superpower because not many people have that either.
That's good to hear, actually. So thank
Well,
you.
thank you so much, Marissa, for your time. I'm so excited you're going to be teaching in our program. And if you guys have any questions for Marissa, we will see you inside of Seven Figure Teams.
Sounds good. I'm excited.